Welcome, everyone, to Beers with Jesus at Todd's World. I'm Todd. Carrie is with me. We do this every week. We do the Wildly Opinionated News Hour that drops on Tuesdays, where we give our wild opinions, at least my wild opinions. Carrie has some. Carrie maybe tempers and goes off on my wild opinions and gives her opinions that might be ever slightly less wild.
Yeah, maybe.
She still cares about celebrities' parents. I don't care at all.
And the Olympics. I care about the Olympics.
That's true.
I got grilled yesterday about the Olympics,
By who?
by my son Patrick, because I said,
Oh,
"Yeah,
you did.
you didn't care about you
Right.
aren't excited about the Olympics." He was like, "Well, why not?" I'm like, "I don't know." He's always just kind of been like, about it." He goes, "Why?" Like he wanted answers. I was like, "You know what? I don't remember. I don't remember why he doesn't like them."
Yeah, because they're all stupid sports nobody cares about. They don't, you wouldn't, you could never have it without the explicit support of said states. Like they couldn't, the market wouldn't support the idea of Olympics on its own. Right.
Okay.
I don't believe. I don't
Okay.
believe there would be such a thing as the Olympics unless it was subsidized by the states involved. Now, that may
Okay.
be just fine,
Okay.
but state subsidized sports are my thing.
Aren't your thing. Okay, there you go.
I don't know.
That's I needed some bottom line
Like
for Patrick, and I was like, "I just
that's the
can't."
like
Come on.
miniature cutout. And then they're all a bunch of leftists, and I think, and it's
Oh,
not even
no.
mind that I don't mind watching skiing, but why do I gotta listen to you ski and bash the United States? I'm just
Yeah.
not, no
Well,
thanks.
hopefully they're not
Ashamed
all.
of the flag on your arm.
Yeah, they should
Whatever.
be.
Anyway, that's
Okay,
politics now. It's news, guys. That's what you want to listen to.
check it
If you
out.
haven't listened to the Wildly Opinionated News Hour, go give it a shot. That's our news, politics, culture, just wide open,
Yep,
no choke on the barrel. We just let her fly. And then
it's a fun
this is
time.
Beers. Beers with Jesus.
Mhm,
We walk through stories of the Bible. Right now, we're walking through Acts. We did Mark, took our time going through it. We made a little better time through Acts.
I
Maybe we're
think
getting
so.
better at this,
I
Gary.
think we are.
Or
We're
maybe
not, like,
there's a
picking
lot in
apart,
Mark.
like, every line.
And then, so we've got, I think, like 5 chapters left in Acts.
Okay.
Today, again, we're going to go through a whole chapter. So the
Oh,
way
good.
these things are set up, they've got some of Paul kind of maybe preaching or giving, just speaking to the crowds or whatever. And then you've got a lot of kind of action, story action that we can kind of roll through. And so I think it kind of suits itself to kind of banging through,
Yeah.
as opposed to Mark, where there was a lot of shorter passages and Jesus is dealing with people, and you want to even deal with those shorter passages because there's a lot in there. So
Well,
this
I
is the
think
story of the early church. But go ahead, Carrie.
I was gonna say, if you go back and listen to us doing Mark, you might just wanna kinda kick up the listening speed, like the au so that you're
I
not,
think
like,
after
taking a year.
this, I'm
Mark
thinking about
in a
going to
year.
Genesis. I want to do Genesis, and people probably think that's crazy, but I think we'll make it work. It'll be wildly entertaining.
I'm along for the ride. I'll do it.
Have you ever gone through the book of Genesis,
I
or
feel
not
like
so
I
much
did when I was really, like, I much
when you were a kid?
younger, but,
Yeah.
I mean, Genesis is full of kind of like those traditional Bible stories we grew up with, I believe.
Some. You've got, of course, your creation story, your Adam and Eve story, then you
Mhm,
get to the Tower of Babel, or then the flood story,
mhm.
the Noah and the ark.
Right,
Then it kind of settles down and goes into the story of the beginning of the patriarchs, like Abraham,
right.
Isaac, Jacob,
Mhm.
Joseph. That's kind of how Genesis closes itself out for the last, I don't know, I think there's 40 some chapters in Genesis. So
Oh, wow, okay.
it's kind
Are
of a big book, but
we gonna
the
do them
last
all?
30 of them kind of close out. I don't know. We'll see where we're at.
Okay.
But so anyway, guys, that's what we're going to do today. We're in Acts. What did we say? 23, right?
22, I think.
22. Sorry. Right. Acts 22. We did 21 last week, and we ended that was where Paul is at the tail end of his third missionary journey, and Paul is dead set to go to Jerusalem,
Mhm.
right? Excuse me, guys. Where's the cough button? Um, and then he gets some mixed messages, as we talked about last week.
Mhm.
He goes places, they prophesy over him, don't go to Jerusalem, but Paul wants to go to Jerusalem, and he's going to he gets arrested. And that's kind of what he's in the process of that when we left chapter 21. So the Jews had seen him from Ephesus. He'd been at the temple and trying to help some people with their vows, basically trying to get him to ingratiate himself into the Jews in Jerusalem,
Mhm.
into their favor. And uh so now for the sake of James, and because James asked him to, because people had the Jews tended to
Oh,
think that
right.
Paul was a traitor. That's how they looked at Paul, because Paul was a Jew of the Jews,
Mhm.
Pharisee, all these things. Jesus appears to him, and all of a sudden he's out all over the world telling the Gentiles all about Jesus. And to the Jews, he's just a traitor.
Mhm.
You'll find he's not, even though he was educated by the preeminent scholar of the day in Jerusalem. You'll find all references to Paul in anything, any type of Jewish history has been completely scrubbed. And it's not like they pretend he didn't exist. Just they'd like to forget it. Like they know he exists, they just consider him a traitor.
Okay.
So, like we do Benedict Arnold, right?
Right.
Same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or Barack Obama, same idea. Okay, guys, just give you a little flavor for news. Okay, Carrie, you want to read?
Sure.
Maybe start at that last verse
Mhm.
in
Paul tells
21,
the story.
and then if you want,
Mhm.
roll through the whole thing. If
Okay.
you don't, if you want to stop halfway through and you
Okay.
want to talk just about Paul's thing first and then go from there, that's fine too. Whatever you feel like.
Okay.
It's your show, Carrie.
It's I love how Todd just puts me on the hot seat once in a while, just like, "Take it
It's up
away."
to you.
No, here we go. All right. So this is just before 22.
Yeah.
Standing on the barracks steps, Paul turned and held his arms up. A hush fell over the crowd as Paul began to speak. He spoke in Hebrew. My dear brothers and fathers, listen carefully to what I have to say before you jump to conclusions about me. When they heard him speaking Hebrew, they grew even quieter. No one wanted to miss a word of this. He continued, I am a good Jew, both in Tarsus in the province of Cilicia, but educated here in Jerusalem under the exacting eye of Rabbi Gamaliel, thoroughly instructed in our religious traditions, and have always been passionately on God's side, just as you are right now. I went after anyone connected with this way, went at them with all my might, ready to kill for God. I rounded up men and women right and left and had them thrown in prison. You can ask the chief priest or anyone in the high council to verify this. They all knew me well. Then I went off to our brothers in Damascus, armed with official documents authorizing me to hunt down the followers of Jesus there, arrest them, and bring them back to Jerusalem for sentencing. As I arrived on the outskirts of Damascus about noon, a blinding light blazed out of the skies, and I fell onto the ground dazed. I heard I heard a voice, Saul, Saul, why are you out to get me? Who are you, Master? I asked. He said, I am Jesus the Nazarene, the one you're hunting down. My companions saw the light, but they didn't hear the conversation. Then I said, What do I do now, Master? He said, Get to your feet and enter Damascus. There you'll be told everything that's been set out for you to do. And so we entered Damascus, but nothing like the entrance I had planned. I was blind as a bat, and my companions had to lead me in by the hand. Excuse me. And that's when I met Ananias. Is that how we say that?
Ananias, maybe?
Ananias, thank you. And that's when I met Ananias, a man with a sterling reputation in observing our laws. The Jewish community in Damascus is unanimous on that score. He came and put his arm on my shoulder. Look up, he said. I looked and found myself looking right into his eyes. I could see again. Then he said, The God of our ancestors has handpicked you to be briefed on his plan of action. You've actually seen the righteous innocent and heard him speak. You are to be a key witness to everyone you meet of what you've seen and heard. So what are you waiting for? Get up and get yourself baptized, scrubbed clean of those sins, and personally acquainted with God. Well, it happened just as Ananias said. After I was back in Jerusalem and praying one day in the temple, lost in the presence of God, I saw him, saw God's righteous innocent, and heard him say to me, 'Hurry up, get out of here as quickly as you can. None of the Jews here in Jerusalem are going to accept what you say about me.' At first, I objected. Who has better credentials? They all know how obsessed I was with hunting out those who believed in you, beating them up in meeting places, and throwing them in jail. And when your witness Stephen was murdered, I was right there, holding the coats of the murderers and cheering them on. And now they see me totally converted? What better qualification could I have?" But he said, "Don't argue. Go. I'm sending you on a long journey to outsider non Jews." Now, do we want to pause there or you want me to keep going?
No, I like that.
Hmm?
I like that. Pause there.
Okay.
I think that's good. The rest of it we'll read before we're done, but that's all
Okay.
that really is doing. The rest
Yeah.
of it's just moving the story forward to the next kind of major
Next phase.
confrontation that Paul has
Okay.
with the Sanhedrin. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a little bit of action. It's not the end of the
Okay.
world. So, um, Paul gets up. He's been these Jews have been trying to kill him. We
Mm-hmm.
didn't. You have to go back and listen to last week's. By the way, we read the Message only because the Message is the best. But you can read whatever you want. But when you listen to us, you're going to listen to the Message.
Yeah.
So I happen to like the Message. I enjoy the narrative quality of it a
Mm-hmm.
lot. I think
It's well
it's a
done.
it's a great read, and the way
It's
that
different and
it hits
but
a
it's
little different. I think
mm-hmm.
the differences help because it helps it kind of hit you in a way that the way that we've always read it kind of dulls it a little bit. You know what I mean? Just because we're
You
used to it.
mean to hear something different? Like
Yeah.
hear the same story but worded differently?
Yeah.
I
In other
can
words,
hear
if
that.
somebody keeps saying the same thing the same way to you over and
Mhm,
over again, you start to
mhm.
get that starts to kind of lose its edge. You know what I
That's
mean?
I've never thought about that, that's interesting. It's kinda like hearing like, there you can, like, really like a song, um, and you've heard it the same way, and then someone covers it, and so
Yeah.
they haven't changed the song, but it's just a little different, and
Hits different.
you appreciate it differently because
No,
it's
that's a
not the
good
same
yeah, that's a good way to
the
think about it
cover.
because that's what I think it does. I think all it does is the newer language. Like C.S. Lewis
Mhm.
talked about Bible translations and he talked about how the classical versions are beautiful, but that beauty also dulls the message a little bit. And so to get it into our own kind of contemporary language and have it hit a little different, it can open the door up a little bit in ways that it might not have the other way.
That's cool.
Not that one, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So
I like it.
anyway, um, so the Jews are after Paul, and the Jews are after Paul because they're one of the most racist people in the world, and they hate the idea of non-Jews coming into of Paul going out to the Gentiles, and the idea that God was taking his message away from the Jews
Mhm.
and giving it to the Gentiles is how they perceived it. I don't think Paul thought of it that way. I think Paul thought of it as the culmination of the message and now God's opening it up. Jesus came and he just blew the door wide open and he's opening it up to everybody now. And he took this message that God has been building, this story, and made sense of it all.
Right, like you're saying he thought that it was almost like an evolution, like a continuation
Yes.
of whereas the Jews just felt like this is new, different, outside of what we teach, and therefore it's contradiction,
Yeah,
wrong.
they
It's
hated non-Jews.
opposition. It's
That's how they
opposition.
were.
Yeah.
They were just wildly racist as a people. Now, but you could argue that a lot of the ancient cultures were, but Jews were
Yeah.
especially that way. It had
Yeah,
been
they all
pounded into
were.
them how special they were. God had opened the Red Sea for them when they pulled them out of Israel or out of Egypt and rescued them
Mhm.
and all these things. And they were special. They were God's chosen people. It's just
Mhm.
they were never gonna be it was never about natural Israel. It was always about the remnant within Israel that came to God by faith. And Paul realizes that, and but anyway, Paul's still a Jew, and he's still got, we talked about that last week, he's still got that kind of bent toward going to Jerusalem and doing temple things and doing Jew stuff. Like, he really liked it.
Well,
That was how he grew up. That
do
was
you
his
think he
life.
wants contact with the people, with the Jews he was a part of before? Like, is that what
Yeah,
he's
his heart,
drawn
I
to?
think, went to the Jews, because if at the end of this, when what's wild about what Paul talks about is it's basically just kind of his testimony.
Mhm,
He's trying to relate to his Jewish brothers and sisters, but it's all about God. It's God doing the acting on Paul all
mhm.
through this story. But at the end, he's having this conversation with God when he's in this trance. And he's just intent on going to the Jews and giving them this message. And God's like, no, they aren't going to listen to you.
Yeah.
And then Paul argues with him, because that's what we do. I mean, we're no
Yeah.
different.
Yeah,
Like, we
we
argue
do.
with God. No, no, no. You don't understand God. That's how we are. I've got the best pedigree for this. Imagine how much they're going to listen to me.
I love how optimistic he is about that because he's so like, like you can feel it. And it's nice that he recapped his experience, but we felt this way before. This was a really powerful experience. And so if you went through that, you would want to share it. You would want to convey it and convince everyone else that this is what they should be, this is who they should
Right.
be following as well. And yeah, so he's just so excited. I love how
Well, and
optimistic he
it
is.
put it, when I say when you kind of describe it as an evolution or whatever, it's a culmination of
Yeah,
everything that it
culmination,
built.
like,
And so to Paul, it all makes sense. Like, how can they not? Like, I'm going to be able to make sense of this for all of them
like you guys
because
have
of
the
this.
first part. This is
Yeah,
like
because
the
of this
rest.
revelation that he got,
Yeah.
and God said, "No, I've got other plans for you." And God said they're not going to believe anyway. He said, "None of the Jews here in Jerusalem are going to accept what you say about me." Now, that didn't mean no Jews anywhere are going to, because we know Jews did.
Mhm.
But and that does also, we know Some Jews did in Jerusalem,
Mhm.
obviously. There was a big
Right.
church there till the Romans destroyed it. But the by and large, that wasn't, God was done with the Jews by and large. I think God was done with the specific kind of race chosen people idea from a racial standpoint. You know what I mean? Like, when you look
Okay.
at Galatians, read this quick. Galatians 3:28 and 29. In Christ's family, this is Paul writing a letter to the Galatians, which he's been to throughout his missionary journeys, this church that he established there in Galatia, in Asia Minor. In Christ's family, there can be no division into Jew and non Jew, slave and free, male and female. Among us, you are all equal. That is, we are all in common relationship with Jesus Christ. Also, since you are Christ's family, then you are Abraham's famous descendant, heirs according to the covenant promises. So, when we talk a lot, or we use the term that the ground is all level at the foot of the cross, that's what God's doing, is he's leveling it all out between Jews and non-Jews, blacks, whites, male, female, the patriarchy. He's leveling that. He's leveling all of these kind of built-in natural tribal power structures that I think are natural, and I think probably make sense in civil government, in worldly government, you know
Mhm.
what I mean?
Mhm.
But at the church, it's at the church. See, we try to take that, we try to force it into other areas, and we say, we're not gonna have any racism ever here, and we're gonna help these and put these down, and we're gonna level the field, and it never works. Because the only place it works, I think, is the church. It only works with the Holy Spirit
Mhm.
dealing with the people involved, humbling everybody involved, and we're all servants of Jesus. You know what I mean?
Right.
But the Jews didn't like that message because they still felt special,
Yeah.
very special.
Well, yeah, I mean, our intentions can be good, but we don't view everybody equally the way God does. Like
No,
we don't love everyone the way God does.
right.
So,
But that's what we should aspire to. And that's what the church
sure.
should aspire
Mhm.
to.
Yeah.
The church should be aspiring to, listen, it's not like if you're a dude, you get special favor and you can do special things. And if you're
Mhm.
a woman, you got to sit in submission. It's not like if you're a Jew, you sit over here, and if you're
Mhm.
Dutch, you sit over. You know what I mean? It's
Yep.
just not like that. We're all one in the body of Christ,
Mhm.
and that's where I think we can find true uh post-racial
Right.
dynamic and freedom, right?
Mhm.
And I do believe that. I think that's what the church is for. I don't think when we try to take that, even though it's a good impulse, and we try to filter it into the rest of civilization, it's
Mhm.
okay, but it doesn't always work
Yeah.
because we're imperfect about how we go about it. And because everybody's not Christians. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah, that's true
it
too.
doesn't work without the Holy Spirit, I don't think. And
Mhm.
so when we try to shoehorn other things into it, we find, oh, I
Yeah.
thought this would work better. I thought everybody would see it this way. That's what Paul's like. I
I
don't
was gonna say
understand. How can they
that's what
not?
Paul thinks, like, I have great credentials. I love how I said that. That's funny.
I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah.
He there was a couple things.
Mhm.
When he's given his when he's talking to the Jews, he says, "My dear brothers and fathers," and he's trying to remind them that he's one of them, that I'm as common, like, we
Yeah.
hold all this in common. You know, I grew up here. I was
Mhm.
under this famous teacher. You all knew me. I was doing all these amazing things, persecuting the church and everything else. But here's what happened to me. And he said, when he says, and I've always been passionately on God's side, just as you are right now. Were the Jews really on God's side at that point?
Well, they thought they were. I mean,
They thought they were.
he's definitely using a persuasive technique here, you know.
I agree.
Mhm. And it's also a nice reminder. I think it's also his way of reminding them, like, "Hey, don't forget, you're supposed
Like,
to be on
calling them
God's."
back to what they were
Yes,
called to
you're
originally.
supposed to be on God's side here, so he's kind of laying it out there as if they are behaving that way, maybe to remind them.
Like, you weren't called by God, you weren't rescued out of Egypt, you weren't made a special nation just so you could be a bunch of racists.
Right.
Right? I mean, really.
Sure, sure.
I mean, what was special about you was supposed to be your dedication to God. It wasn't the race that you were born. It
Mhm.
was God chose you and God set you apart, and then you were going to worship him. One God, one of the only countries, nationalities in the world where that idea of monotheism ever gained any kind of hold. And instead, the Jews took it and it became not about God, it became about them.
Right. It's hard to let go of, a superiority. It's why, like, Christians today sometimes get really judgy and self-righteous
Yeah.
because they.
It's become about the church experience, about the
Mhm.
whatever, the
It
Sunday
becomes,
show.
yeah, I mean, they, like, start to believe. I mean, it's such it's a gift, like, we have God's grace, we were created in his image, and it's all these wonderful things, but if you kind of flip that in your mind to be like, "I am so amazing," it
Yeah.
starts to
No
turn a
one
little
else
bit.
deserves this. Like, what?
Right, exactly. You start to look down on someone who isn't in the same place, or who
Yeah.
isn't walking into the same building with a cross on the top
Well, it's the
as
same
you.
thing that
Yeah.
we ran into all over, but you ran into in the South with slavery
Mhm.
and even after the Civil War with segregation and everything else, and they're like,
Mhm.
you need your own drinking fountain because you're black and you're not white. It's the same impulse that
Mhm.
goes through all of it, which is we wanna make it about the color that we are, about the people that we've descended from.
Mhm.
And and it was never about that with God, it was always about our relationship to God. So in the church, that becomes obvious because that's supposed to be all that there is.
Mhm.
We know that there's a lot more than that now. We've added a few thousand layers, but at its baseline,
Mhm.
that's what Jesus came, I think, to do. You know what I mean?
Sure.
The offer is open to everyone, and accepting Christ, embracing Christ, should draw you closer to each other,
Mhm.
regardless of your differences, regardless of your racial differences, regardless of your, um, your wealth differences, or all the different things.
Mhm.
And I think that's
Yeah.
the
And
Jews
if
didn't
it
get that.
doesn't, you're on the wrong track.
So then
Yep.
it's interesting that Paul then takes it and he makes it all about God. And he says, listen, the reason, you know why Paul is putting it in this way, because this is how he thinks about it. He thinks when he tells God, at first I objected, who has better credentials? Because that's what he starts with. These are my credentials. You remember me,
Mhm.
right? He
Yeah.
still thinks this should work this way. That's my point. How many
Right.
years removed from this conversation with God? But in Paul, he still thinks, I think that should have worked. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He does it all the time. He goes to the Jews first on his missionary journeys, wherever he goes. Like when Paul says he has a love for Jews and for his tradition and his heritage, you can see it shining out in everything he does.
Mhm.
Maybe sometimes to a fault, but that wouldn't be any different than any of the rest of us, probably.
Mhm. Right.
We all have kind of our blind spots and our things that we kind of carry with us. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
That we can't quite fully shake.
It's okay.
Maybe
Yeah.
even if we're an apostle. I don't know, you know what I mean? We're
I mean, he was all in. He was all in before his conversion. He was all in after his conversion,
yeah.
and I don't know, you can't really fault him for it.
I love the way he describes his conversion, though. I love
Yeah.
how he's that when this light of understanding dawns,
Mhm.
and it's kinda like when John talks about how Jesus came and the life light entered the world. So this is what it looked like when the life light entered Paul's world,
Mhm.
but we get kind of the same idea of when the life light enters the whole world. Because he says, "A blinding light blazed out of the skies, and he fell to the ground, and I heard a voice, 'Saul, Saul, why are you out to get me?'" A real encounter with Jesus, I think, where it pushes us, and I think we see this in this passage, his first question is, "Who are you, Master?" So, in other words, we get a first encounter with Jesus or with God, with,
Mhm.
with something we can't explain maybe,
Mhm.
like like a spirituality that's of the spirit, but at that point, we might not have the words to know what we're talking about,
Okay.
but we get this light that enters our life for whatever reason. Maybe we go through a hard time, maybe somebody dies, whatever the case, something shakes us up and we fall off the horse of life, and and God blazes
Yeah.
out in light.
Mhm.
And our first question is, "Who are you, Lord?" I think because when God shows up, he's not what we expect. You know what I mean? And so this isn't what Paul thought he was serving God. He would have thought if God was going to show up to him, he'd been like, "Go get him, bud." Like that's what he's looking for. Not this, "Why are you persecuting me?" Paul's like, "Who are you? What?"
Well, it's interesting. Like, that's one of the things that struck me about this, is that he immediately recognizes it as, I mean, unless master means something else, but he immediately recognizes this as an authority.
Yeah.
And because, like, if that
I think he
happened,
recognizes it as God of sorts of
it's something, because I'm surprised that when Paul was Saul and doing what he was doing in his life, I'm surprised he wasn't more like, just who are you, or what are you, or what's happening, that sort of reaction. But the fact that he immediately feels enough and sees enough that he recognizes instantly that it's an
This is
authority.
somebody I don't know,
Mhm.
but it's an authority.
Mhm.
This is like, there's almost that instant, like, I think he probably knows. You know what
The
I mean?
Yeah,
Like, deep down?
right.
Like, we
Which
might
is
know, but we
neat.
still gotta ask because this is not what I was expecting. You know
Right.
what I mean? Didn't come in the box or the package that I was anticipating.
Yeah. You know what else I was gonna say, when we heard about his conversion was it in Mark that
No, Acts. It was
it was
Acts 8
oh,
or
in the
9.
beginning of Acts?
Yeah,
Okay. Well, who is telling that story at that time?
Luke.
Luke.
Same one's
So,
telling the story now.
okay, telling the story now, but now the perspective is from Paul. So I
Well,
like
Luke's traveling with Paul at this
right.
point, so it
So
makes it a little easier. He probably wasn't
Luke
with
tells
Paul.
the story, like, Luke tells the story of the conversion,
Yeah.
but it's like third person. Here, it's just neat to hear it in Paul's voice.
Oh, yeah, this is Paul's
Paul
first
saying,
person
"This is what
account.
happened," and yeah, so I thought that was kinda cool too.
And we got one of those in Acts
Mm.
9, but it differs a little from this one.
Mhm.
But I think, see, to me, that that makes it sound more true, not less. That as we
Oh, yeah.
recount a major event in our life, that
Mhm.
there would be a few discrepancies in how we recall it at different times. You know what
Yes.
I mean?
Right.
Um,
I wanted to ask you about something.
go ahead.
He talks about God's righteous innocent.
Yeah, that's what he calls Jesus. I like that.
I do too. He says it, I think he said it twice. And I'm like, I don't know if I've ever heard that term.
Yeah, there's a
Sounds
couple.
like such a Catholic term. Like, I feel like that's something we would have,
I don't
like
have it
heard before.
readily available, but there's a few. There's some times in the Old Testament where, and in the prophets where, Jesus is referred to as God's innocent or God's righteous innocent,
Okay.
and so,
It's beautiful.
but it isn't a real. It's not well used throughout the Bible, you know
Oh,
what I mean?
right.
I thought that too. I thought
Stood
that's
out.
an interesting because
Hmm.
it reminds you that everything that happened to Jesus happened because of us. I mean, it wasn't
Hmm.
God came to die for us, not because he deserved to die,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I thought it was interesting that as soon as the light dawns, it pushes Paul to ask, "Who are you?" But
Hmm.
also, and I think this is what we've talked about on and off throughout Peers with Jesus is if seek and you'll find, ask and God will answer, knock and the door will be open. So Paul says, "Who are you?" And Jesus answers right away
Hmm.
because that's what Jesus does. He's not going to keep you waiting on when you really want to know who Jesus is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Unless he has to keep you waiting because your receiver needs some work. That could be, but meaning us, we're the receiver.
Yes.
But he says, "I'm Jesus of Nazareth, the one you're hunting down. My companion," and then he says this I thought was a real interesting line too. "My companions saw the light, but they didn't hear the conversation."
Hmm.
And I just kind of thought about how we'll go through our lives and there'll be certain times that we see the light and maybe other people around us in our circle or involved in our life, they see that God's entering it too. Like they can see the light, but they don't hear the conversation we're having with God. You
Hmm.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this is true even this is that the life light entered the world. I think that the Jews in this, they knew about Jesus. They'd probably been some of the ones yelling to have him killed.
Hmm.
Maybe they were some of the ones that went and heard him speak. I mean, we're not that far removed from Jesus at this point. So
Yeah.
we're like 10, 15 years. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. It's not that long. Is it even
No.
that long?
I don't know
I don't.
exactly how long it
Okay.
is. I feel like it probably is because Paul's gone on 3 missionary journeys. I think some things have happened.
Okay.
But,
Oh, yeah, and didn't he
but
spend, like, a few years in Ephesus or something like that? But
yeah.
anyway,
But
okay.
even if you remember Herod was fascinated with John, and then he was fascinated with Jesus. He'd been fascinated with Jesus for a long time, and he finally gets his chance when Pilate sends him to him, and Jesus doesn't even answer him.
Oh, right.
You can be you can have some vision of the light entering the world. You can even be fascinated by it
Mhm,
and not be involved in the conversation, not be part of either talking to God or God talking to you. Does
mhm.
that make sense?
Yeah,
And that can be true of the people close to us too. Like they can know something's going on, but they're not having the conversation we are. You know what I mean? Maybe that's what happened with Paul in the previous chapter. I don't know.
right, I mean, everyone like, if you look in your circle so you and I both grew up in church,
Yes.
but as adults, we've discovered, new depths of faith, like faith maturity and things like that, and if you look at the people around you, each of us looks at the people around us, um, everyone comes to things at different times.
Yeah.
Even if you're like
And some
in
people don't come to things at all. A lot of people don't.
sure. But I mean, even if you're in like the same class,
Right. Yeah.
growing up together, it's not like you mature and understand and develop the discernment all at the
Right.
same rate. It happens in its own time with each person or
Yeah.
not. Hopefully, hopefully by the
God,
end.
we all have to live by the light that we've been given
Mhm.
to some extent. And that is going to be different for everybody. Some people are going to seek it harder and one would think they're going to get more. I mean, that's kind of the story of that's what Jesus said over and over. And then some people won't, and some people will still get more. Moses wasn't necessarily seeking harder, and yet look what God did. So you just never know.
Mhm.
You never know with God. I think that's where we end up all the time. He just
You never know.
there's promises. You know he loves us.
Mhm,
You know he's gonna provide for us. You know he's gonna rescue us. You know he cares for us.
mhm.
But then how he goes about it all, that's kind of like, I don't know. I mean, we're half surprised that, it doesn't go the way we want, but then we learn to trust. I think that's all it is. I think all it is discipleship is just like we talked about last week. It's a series of steps out into faith.
Mhm,
And sometimes they're not necessarily the steps. When I say the wrong steps, I don't know if they're wrong or they're not the steps that God's going to use at that point,
mhm.
and we don't see what we want to think of as success from that. I don't know if that is true from God's standpoint. It may shape them some things in us for future things God's going to do, and in God's mind that was perfectly successful, that failure. And you know what I mean?
Sure, okay. That's a good way
Yeah.
of looking at it. I hope that's true.
I like to think that's true anyway.
But yeah, his plan is not always ours. You know, we have Lent coming up in our church,
Yeah,
and our priest was talking
I know
today.
that 'cause I've been eating punchkis.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Fat Tuesday that
That
extends
Tuesday
like
is
a
coming
month
up.
for me. It's Fat February.
Nice. So, our priest was up there talking about, giving up something for Lent or doing something for Lent, whichever approach you take.
Yeah.
And he said, you need to sit down and ask the hard because like we have in our minds like what we should be working on, what we should do. And he says, you should ask the hard question, and that is ask God, all right, what do you want me to do?
He's right, and that
Because
is the question. We like to come at God with
with all of our
multiple choice
ideas.
questions,
Yeah.
like Paul.
Like,
Paul
well,
already knew how it was gonna work,
yeah, exactly. So,
and even argues with God about it, which I don't know. I'm no different than that. I
yeah,
argue with
I
God
do it, I'm sure, in my
because
own
I
way.
know I just surely this can't be correct.
Surely this can't be part of the plan.
Well, and I think that's the thing that we see here with Paul, um,
Uh-huh.
is he's told by Ananias. It's also interesting that God answers Paul not fully, but he just gives him enough for the next step. So in other words,
Oh, true.
Paul's instantly when he finds out the answer to who are you,
Mhm.
his next question is what do I do now? So he's already submitted himself. He understands the lordship. He's entered into it that fast. And God tells him, get on your feet and go to Damascus. There you'll learn more. There you'll be told everything. So
Right.
if he doesn't do that, you know what I mean? God leads us in successive steps.
Mhm.
He doesn't teleport us like Star Trek. You know what I
Right.
mean?
And didn't Ananias say something like that too to him?
Ananias,
He says,
well,
"He's
he went on
handpicked
to
you."
about Ananias, you could see again. Then he says, the God of our ancestors has handpicked you, talking to Paul, to be briefed on his plan of action. You've
Mm,
actually seen the righteous innocent and heard him speak. So that's what I guess we say would qualify Paul as an apostle, right? Because he
okay.
wasn't he wasn't a disciple. He didn't journey along with Jesus.
Mhm.
Jesus appeared to him later, but he appeared to him and talked to him, and he talks about how he went into Arabia, the deserts of Arabia, for 3 years, and kind of got with God, and the ideas that God taught, and then this trance, God's appearing to him. So there's some special things with Paul and
Mhm.
God's relationship with him right from the beginning, and it continues on. Um, but so
Yeah.
Ananias says, you've actually seen the righteous innocent, heard him speak. You are to be a key witness to everyone you meet of what you've seen and heard. So what are you waiting for? Get up and get yourself baptized, scrubbed clean of those sins, and personally acquainted with God. Now, do you think that that's all? Do you think he's talking about baptism for all of that, or is the baptism part get up and get yourself baptized, scrubbed clean of those sins, and then subsequently personally acquainted with God? Because that's going to take it. In other words, just because you went down into the water, just because the priest threw some holy water on your head,
Mhm.
that doesn't. You're not personally acquainted with God at that point. Fair
Sure. Okay.
or not? I don't know. Or is he talking about the
Um,
same thing in the same event? I don't really know. You know what I mean?
I
I guess it
mean,
could be either.
it could be either. I feel like logically getting like he knows God, but now he's looking at God and he's connected to God in a whole different he's connected's the wrong word.
Yeah, personally acquainted. That
Right. It's a whole different um phase of his
level.
relationship with God. Yeah, a whole different level now. So
Yeah.
it's not like he had never heard of God before. He just is in
He would have thought before he was acquainted with God.
right.
But
So it's
God's
gonna be
like,
different now.
yeah,
But so I was gonna say logically, I think you and I would say that takes time.
yeah.
So
But it
mhm,
starts with the first step of faith, which is baptism, clearly.
mhm,
And that was true. That's been true all through Acts. That people believe and are baptized pretty much,
mhm.
right? That's what we see. We see them believe and they're baptized, and
Yes.
that's the first step of obedience, and it all starts from there. And we don't really see anyone in Acts who doesn't get baptized. That I
Yeah,
know of,
that's
that
good.
that's pointed out at least, right?
Mhm,
So that baptism is an integral part. And then that's that first step of obedience. Are you willing to publicly confess me before
mhm.
people? And then, then from there on, we get
Right.
personally acquainted with God. I would argue that our whole life is getting personally acquainted with God.
Right, that's what I mean.
You
I don't
know?
feel like it's like you flip a switch. It's,
Yeah,
right.
that's kind of where I'm at. I'm with you.
Yeah.
So then Paul goes, he's he's uh
Mm,
he's back in Jerusalem praying one day at the temple, lost in the presence of God, and then he kind of falls into this trance. And God starts talking to him. And he says, "Hurry up, get out of here as quickly as you can. None of the Jews here in Jerusalem are going to accept what you say about me." And then Paul tells him why God's wrong. That's what we do. Because
yep.
we know why
Mhm.
God's wrong. We can see it clearly. We don't know why God can't. But at that moment, God's missing something. And Paul says, "At first I objected. Who has better credentials? They all know how obsessed I was with hunting out those who believed in you, beating them up in the meeting places and throwing them in jail. And when your witness Stephen was murdered, I was right there holding the coats of the murderers and cheering them on. And now they see me totally converted. What better qualifications could I have?" I also think it's interesting. God does the same thing with Moses. It's a little longer, but God will only argue with us for a little bit. He will answer us. He will argue with us for a minute.
Mhm.
He'll be like, "Don't argue with me. I got this, this, this." And then we come back because, of course, we don't listen to the first thing he said. And and then he's just like, done. And he's like, "Don't argue. Go. I'm sending you on a long journey to outsider non-Jews." Like, you're or me or any of us aren't going to be terribly successful in changing God's mind, I don't think, about what he has planned.
Yeah, I don't think so. And I don't think he particularly likes, us saying, "Well, I'll try that. First, I'm gonna try it my way."
Yeah. If only you understood how perfect I am for this exact thing.
It's funny.
So, yeah, I
Mhm.
think that's interesting. Now, I'm gonna read the very last
Okay.
part just
Mhm.
to kinda lead us into next week. The people in the crowd had listened attentively up to this point. So this is Paul tells his story, tells the story of his conversion, tells the
Mhm.
story of God entering his life, and this is why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Mhm.
Like, you wanna know about me? This is it. You think you know all these things about me. This is what matters about me.
Mhm.
But the people had listened attentively up until the point where it talked about Paul going to non-Jews, and then they get mad, right?
Mm.
Uh, but now they broke loose, shouting out, "Kill him! He's an insect! Stomp on him!" They shook their fists. They filled the air with curses. That's when the captain intervened and ordered Paul taken into the barracks. By now, the captain was thoroughly exasperated. He decided to interrogate Paul under torture
Mm.
in order to get to the bottom of this, to find out. That's always works, right? Just beat him until he tells you the truth. We found, I think, from our government angle that torture doesn't work all that well. They tell you whatever you want to hear to stop, but you don't always get the truth. But Paul was a Roman citizen, is what we're going to find out. So he decided the captain's going to interrogate Paul under torture in order to get to the bottom of this, to find out what he had done and that provoked this outraged violence. As they spread eagled him with strips of leather, getting him ready for the whip, Paul said to the centurion standing there, "Is this legal? Torturing a Roman citizen without a fair trial?" When the centurion heard that, he went directly to the captain. "Do you realize what you've done? This man is a Roman citizen." Captain came back and took charge. Is what I hear right? You're a Roman citizen? Paul said, I certainly am. The captain was impressed. I paid a huge sum for my citizenship. How much did it cost you? Nothing, said Paul. It cost me nothing. I was free from the day of my birth. So he was born a Roman citizen. That put a stop to the interrogation, and it put the fear of God into the captain. He had put a Roman citizen in chains and come within a whisker of putting him under torture. The next day, determined to get to the root of the trouble and know for sure what was behind the Jewish accusation, the captain released Paul and ordered a meeting of the high priest and the high council to see what they could make of it. Paul was led in and took his place before them. So we're going to go into that next week.
How do you think
But
that's going to go?
I don't know. I'm sure they'll love him. I'm sure he'll convince them all.
They'll say, look at this man's
And God will
qualifications.
be shocked. He'll be like, I never would have thought.
Wow.
So if you're a Roman citizen, you couldn't just be you couldn't, first of all, they shouldn't have bound them to begin with. You can't, you have to take them and they get a trial. And, this was where much of our system of justice came from, was
Okay.
Greek and Roman traditions, and what became Western civilization traditions. And so anyway, the guy kind of freaks out because he realized he was about to whip Paul. So Paul's actually saving this captain because he could have been in big trouble for this. He could have been
Right.
whipped himself, or
Shoot.
there's I don't know if it was a capital crime. I don't know exactly, but it
Okay.
wasn't good. It was a big problem. So what do we learn from this? Maybe that there's something valuable to citizenship, right? That could, you might have to come back
So
to
yeah.
news for more of that.
Side question. Does this mean, can we infer from this that it's okay for them to torture someone who's not a Roman citizen? I mean,
Well, I don't think we can infer it's okay. That was what the
okay.
Romans were, somewhat of a brutal bunch. I
Okay.
mean, you saw
I'm
the
like,
crucifixions.
okay. But
But the point is that citizenship in Rome was considered so valuable that people paid large sums of money if they weren't born citizens.
okay.
Paul was born a citizen. Maybe his dad paid the big price. Who knows? Maybe his grandfather. Who knows when he had become a citizen
Oh,
of Rome?
he asked. I was like, who raised the question? Paul did.
Yeah.
Paul
Well,
did
Paul
himself.
said Paul knew he had this trump card in his pocket. But
Yeah.
the point is that we're often told that it doesn't matter. It should just be for everyone. No, there's value to citizenship. There always has been. You know what I mean? There was to Paul. And so
Yeah. I mean,
anyway, that's just a little.
it's like your hometown.
Yeah.
You know?
And when you get rid of the concept of citizenship altogether, or you dilute it to the point that it makes no difference, that has bad ramifications on the social fabric, social structure. So we're not going to get all the way into news, but that's just a little side for you guys.
Yeah.
You can come to news and get the rest. I think we did pretty well though on Paul's part. That just kind of moves the story. So okay, how do we get from Paul talking to the crowd to Paul before the Sanhedrin?
Got it.
Probably
Well,
they shouldn't have even kept him overnight, technically by law, but I think that the captain felt like he could get away with, I don't know why he didn't just ask Paul. That's odd to me. Why is everything got to be a big production? Why can't you just be like, what's going on? That we see in the passage, he never asked Paul, why are they so mad at you?
yeah, that's true.
We got to get to the bottom of it and beat it out of you.
I
How
was gonna
about
say,
just
but
ask?
right. But the people they're calling for him to be killed. Like,
Oh yeah.
so yeah, it's interesting that they didn't just have the conversation. Kind of like watching a movie. You're like, why don't they just have a conversation?
Just ask the question.
Yep.
So anyway, we'll find out next week what happens
right.
in front of the Sanhedrin. So,
Cool.
all right, guys. Thanks for joining me today, Carrie.
Thank you.
I
Hope
thought
you
it
have
was
a great
good.
day.
Guys, thank you for joining us. Subscribe if you haven't. Join us next week. You'll find us on the socials. Right now, my Facebook's still hacked. At some point, theoretically, Facebook will take care of that for me. But everything else is open. X, Instagram, we're on Rumble, YouTube. You can find us at Todd's World, wherever.
Do you
Go
remember me
ahead, Carrie.
telling you that I found out this, like, acquaintance of mine,
Yeah.
like, was a listener? Well, I asked if she was listening to one or both of the shows, and her answer was one, and I said, "Oh, which one?" And I'm getting no answer, and now I'm thinking maybe it's not her. Like, maybe her Facebook
Oh,
has been hacked.
who knows? We can't keep up,
I know, so
but we believe you should listen to both.
go change your passwords and listen to both, share with friends, protect your
News will
password.
be the Wildly Opinionated News Hour. Listen to it if you haven't. That's out. That drops on Tuesdays.
Mhm.
Beers with Jesus drops on Wednesdays every week. That's what we do. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Yeah,
Hopefully
thank
you'll
you.
subscribe, drop a comment if you feel so obliged, and we may or may not answer. Depends what Carrie feels like that
Yeah,
given week.
please. No, please. I would love to have a little more interaction. I think it'd be fun, so
Wonderful. All right. Thanks for joining me today, Carrie. Guys, we will
thank
see
you.
you next week for Acts 23
Sounds
and
good.
for news on Tuesday. All right. See you guys.
Bye.